Good evening, listeners, brave navigators of the enigmatic and the concealed. Have you ever felt the pull of the unanswered, the allure of the mysteries that shroud our existence? For more than a decade, a unique comic publisher has dared to dive into these mysteries, unafraid of the secrets they might uncover. This audacious entity is Paranoid American. Welcome to the mystifying universe of the Paranoid American podcast.
Launched in the year 2012, Paranoid American has been on a mission to decipher the encrypted secrets of our world. From the unnerving enigma of MK Ultra mind control to the clandestine assemblies of secret societies. From the awe-inspiring frontiers of forbidden technology to the arcane patterns of occult symbols in our very own pop culture. They have committed to unveiling the concealed realities that lie just beneath the surface. Join us as we navigate these intricate landscapes, decoding the hidden scripts of our society and challenging the accepted perceptions of reality.
Folks, I've got a big problem on my hands. There's a company called Paranoid American making all these funny memes and comics. Now, I'm a fair guy. I believe in free speech as long as it doesn't cross the line. And if these AI-generated memes dare to make fun of me, they're crossing the line.
This is your expedition into the realm of the extraordinary, the secret, the shrouded. Come with us as we sift through the world's grand mysteries, question the standardized narratives, and brave the cryptic labyrinth of the concealed truth. So strap yourselves in, broaden your horizons, and steel yourselves for a voyage into the enigmatic heart of the Paranoid American podcast, where each story, every image, every revelation brings us one step closer to the elusive truth.
Hey, look, as you can see, it's already special, and it looks like we've got a half-full sink tank ready to go. You know me and Andreas already. We're ready to tear into this. And if you've been watching the interviews, then you might also know Kitty from Flip City Mag, who also brought along a friend today. I guess, did you just pull somebody off the side of the gas station on the way here, or what?
Well, he looks like he might have been, but he actually lives here.
I don't leave the house.
That's very generous of you.
I came up from the basement just for this.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, this is Flip City Magazine. You should go and check it out. I'm pretty sure I remembered to put all the links in the bio and everything this time before we started. What are we doing here today? Well, we're probably just going to end up watching every single Kubrick movie. Not on this particular episode, but over the course of time. But this one is going to be about Full Metal Jacket, and I think everyone just recently watched it. I've took a bunch of different notes, and I don't know, I'm ready to just kind of tear into this. I'm not really sure exactly where to start on it, but Kitty suggested it and said that it might have been your guys' favorite Kubrick movie. So I guess, yeah, tell us why you care about this movie at all.
Yeah. Why do you care about the movie? He's the one that picked it, actually.
I don't know. It was one of those went out to see when we were 16, 17, watch repeatedly. Why do I care about it? I don't have an answer to that.
I have a childhood trauma with it because my parents rented it, and I walked in right when Gomer Pyle blows his head off. And I was
really?
Like 12.
You walked right in at that time.
At exactly that time,
That's
and
funny.
I was like horrified.
That's
So
really funny.
yeah.
It's the worst time.
So I have childhood trauma over it. Me personally, I just like to watch the first 15 minutes with all the insults.
Yeah.
So
but I like movies.
comedy.
I like movies that appear to be really very serious subject matter, but are actually extremely at the same time. Like, I'm a huge fan of The Sopranos, which seems to deal with such deadly serious crime topics. But if you watch Sopranos a couple of times, it's extremely funny, and there's laughs going on constantly. So that's my.
Yeah, like that. There's a lot of sort of humor in this movie woven in.
I think it's interesting. Like, I saw Full Metal Jacket, 20 years or more after it was made. So when I was growing up and I was like 9 or 10, and all the movies around that time, or even that. By that point, movies had been kind of built up in a genre around that film. So I was watching movies like Apocalypse Now, Operation Dumbo Drop, Vietnam, themed kind of like the craziness of what was going on in the Vietnam War. And there's like a lot of syncs in things like Quantum Leap, right? Like his brother dies because of this woman who's essentially the same Vietnamese terrorist prostitute woman that's in Full Metal Jacket, right? There's a lot of syncs in that kind of storyline that I remember seeing as a kid. And also just like Major Pain, movies like that. What's up? Alex made it. Hey, I was just saying like Major Pain and those kinds of movies from the 90s that talked about boot camp situations. And that feeling when you watch Full Metal Jacket that it's not necessarily the greatest solution. Because if you've also watched movies like Yankee Doodle Dandy or I don't know, just movies from the 50s with Reagan, the way it shows going into the military is different, right? Like they make it clear that it's going to discipline you. Like watch Jack Benny talk about being in the army and getting like concierge calls in the morning to wake him up from his boot camp bunk bed. And the joke being that, of course, they're going to like make you wake up in the morning and they're going to drill sergeant scream at you and he's not going to get massages and everything like that. But that's good because clearly you've all been so weak and soft, and soft men make hard times make hard men. That goes back to that period. And so a lot of people thought, hey, if there's something wrong with you, go to the military. If there's something not right about you, just go to the military. And then they'll give you the discipline you need. And that's no longer taken for granted the same way that it's no longer taken for granted that going to college is going to save your life, right? Like the same kind of trauma that we see where people are being turned inside out and psychologically and physically, from schools, that's reminiscent of what people were seeing in the military in the late 60s, early 70s.
Well, that was my main motivation to join. One of the many ones. The other ones were just all the recruiter lies, and I won't even go into them, but one of the few motivations was like, I needed to learn a little bit of discipline that I just hadn't gotten, and I knew going out into the world, especially if I jumped directly into college, it would have just been like right into a wall. You know what I mean? Like I could kind of see what the trajectory might have been. So yeah, and I think that you made a really good point too about a lot of people like the first, I wouldn't even say half, it's like the first quarter or the first third of the movie, like the boot camp scenes, because it's kind of like fun and silly, and it's almost like having two different movies. RGC mentioned that, or RGZ mentioned that.
Silly as a
I 100% agree.
Describing it, but
yeah, I think even Kubrick thought of it that way, right? Because there's kind of the second part of the movie is completely different, right? And that's the idea, is that here's the theory and here's the practice. And in theory, it should go like this because you want the audience to understand, like, we're giving them the best shot at this. Like, here's what the military should offer. We're not saying that the military didn't give them the same and the greatest treatment that they always give them. There's not some weird kink in the system here. This is his fault, right? He's not good enough for the military, clearly. And that's an unusual thing to show. So then the second part is like, okay, well, now taking that into account, that we did everything we could for you, and then we sent you out there and you were still soft because of your mother, right? Here's what happens, right? And then that's the destructive practicality of the Vietnam War, where all these kids are sent to die. And more, right? That they're not altruistic good boys, right? And that the prostitution is interesting too. Like the oldest profession, they come up upon the oldest profession.
Directly, that's the first scene that you get after boot camp. It goes immediately into that. And there's a scene where the second scene with the prostitute, she's basically wearing room 237 in her clothes. Like the color scheme is the same as in what you see in The Shining. So
there's a lot of incidental. I wanted to make that pun because Alex showed me a clip of something I'd seen earlier, the Vietnamese cryptic signs translated video. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but Alex, that was really
from Rob Azure.
Really interesting stuff, because there's a lot of incidental synchronicity there surrounding these dental advertisements that are going on in the High Nose and etc. around the thing.
I think I didn't get all the way through it, but I remember from my friend Mark's essays back in the day that the kind of the coup de grace of that video is where he translates the language on a water tower to say, "To continuously serve your majesty, Satan," or something like that. So, and I tried to do it myself, and so I was going to watch it myself, but then I got detoured. But I don't know how he got there. I mean, so, but that's the point of it, and so he takes that to mean like, "Oh, war is hell," or whatever. But
well, I think there's more to it. But I just want to say, Calix is asking if this is live. This is live, but you're only allowed one question. That was it. So, but with the synchronicity, with the dentalism, I do think that he's trying to say something about the post-military industrial complex, the same as in The Shining. Because in The Shining, you have Tang, and you have the talcum powder, and yeah, look at. I mean, here's a freaking Kubrick moment for you. You can't see anything else but the name of this sign surrounded in fire.
That's the one. That's the one that says Satan on it. Supposedly. Well, I don't know what that's what Rob Rogers says.
Well, that, and also he points out that obscured a little bit by this tree, which they brought in just to obscure it. Like literally, none of these trees were here because this was shot in England. But there's a Shell Oil logo that seems like it's obscured just enough that they could be like, oh no, it's not really what it is. But it seems almost indefinitely that it's Shell Oil. Well, and that now if you juxtapose the sign about being about serving the devil, and you've got the Shell Oil directly connected to it, and you've got these like plumes of smoke.
So there's a couple things here. So I talked to a friend of mine about this who speaks Vietnamese, and it's like, we continue to serve you, right? Which is like an oil company or a company saying, we're continuing to serve you. But for some reason, the missing, I don't remember exactly the deal, but the missing part of the dots over the U or I or at the end of Nagao at the end there, Nagai or whatever, it's like, it's supposed to be, that changes it from serve you to like worship or like commit liturgy. So it becomes a little bit weirder. And it's like interesting how these specific words, if they have just one dot changed, it completely changes like the meaning of it to be something more deep. But even just on face level, we continue to serve you.
You're mad. I did like a
is a Golden Bough reference.
Cursory right? Google search for one of the phrases, and I got what is a ghoul? It's like a Tokyo ghoul, which is from some anime or something. So it's like it's very close to ghoul on that thing. And it's also, since it's a water tower, you know, I think Mark's essay pointed out, it's like associating that with the age of Aquarius, incoming sort of age of Aquarius, conflating that with like Satanism, essentially a new kind of form, new wrapped form.
There's also something I noticed when they show the dental Hino ads with the smiling kind of Afro Vietnamese commercialism. There's a bunch of little circular beer commercials, these little advertisements for exported 33 beer, you know, this kind of German beer. And that's interesting to me because you have Catholic colonialism, Franco-Catholic colonialism, and then you have like German Lutheranism, because the Germans are the beer. Look at that Iron Eagle, right? Like anywhere that they produce,
which is a battery apparently.
Well, that's pretty interesting.
Well, both of them though, actually, the Eagle ad is for a battery, and this 33 is for a beer. And I guess there's two different battery ads on this one sign though.
So that's interesting. The idea of like electricity or technology and German, you know, technology and beer, because beer you can find wherever the Germans went. This is another thing that we'll get to with The Shining, right? Like 237, Route 237 in Argentina.
There's multiple 237s in this movie, one of which I just discovered today, which is actually great. I don't know if anybody has the movie and can pull it up, but
I just want to quickly say, like, when I was looking, I've looked at a lot of 237s, and I love all the syncs, but my favorite was I'm driving in Argentina on a bus, and we end up on Route 237, and that leads to Bariloche, where Hitler's mansion on the lake is supposed to be, and the nuclear power plant in Argentina. And so for all of the things with the German typewriter and German beer and the idea of colonialism, because wherever you see these stamps of where they've built their little cargo culture, they have either a Catholic church or they have a brewery, right? A brewery is a great way to figure out where the Germans have been.
The beer. Yeah, I'm gonna get the screenshots and then I'll show you.
If you want to pull anything up, feel free to. And I was thinking about there's some other references too with the "my boots were made for walking" is apparently supposed to be just foreshadowing that there's going to be a female sniper that takes out most of the characters that we kind of meet as soon as they venture out by themselves. And it's like basically one person, one female that takes the rest of them out, and that there's almost this weird Ouroboros or like this karmic action where they're kind of like using these prostitutes early on in the scene, and then at the very end a woman takes them all out, and that there's some kind of inversion of feminine. And I don't know, I was watching some other interpretations, and it seems a little bit too on the nose for just straight up Kubrick to have the boots were made for walking just as a foreshadowing of that kind of being the ending. But I don't know, do you guys have any thoughts on that one?
I can imagine Kubrick making a lot of points like about beta kitten programming on either side of the conflict. You can think of Dr. Strangelove and other movies where they talk. I mean, he's made that point that women are used to, create like disassociated sex slaves that are also agents. And the idea that this is happening on the other side might be easier for Americans to look at that point than if we pointed out in, I Spy or something.
Well, isn't like the whole ending scene is, as I think David would point out if he was here, is like a subliminal kind of gang rape of the sniper, where all these men are surrounding her with her. She's dying. She's been penetrated. And it's sort of which is ties it to Rosemary's Baby and that whole set of tropes, which is the Satanist film, so about birthing the Antichrist. So who knows? Yeah.
I mean, do you guys have any particular thoughts about the first part of the movie, like the initial where we meet Private Pile and Cowboy and Joker and the TI? Is there like a bridge between that and then we just immediately see them in the war zone?
How do you mean?
I guess, for example, Pyle dies, right? So the way that I was watching that, it almost seems that they're equating Private Pyle to a literal baby, in that he needs to be shown how to tie his shoes. They got to show him how to like just do the most basic rudimentary things, even to the point where every time they're going out and they're doing some kind of exercise, they'll have him like sucking his thumb and waddling with his pants down around his ankles for half of it.
Star Child.
Yeah,
sort of
I feel
like
Gomer is a part. Gomer is like the part of everybody that can't survive. Like you have to cut away at yourself until you are this soldier, and so they lose all of those aspects. And he's sort of the egregore of all of those things, and he's the kind of thing that can exist. So he's destroyed by the process, even though he's lovable in some ways. He doesn't pass any of the tests.
Well, it's weird because he does pass all the tests, right? He gets all the way to the end. He graduates, and then he kills.
He's born again hard. I mean, he
unalives on YouTube's himself.
Yeah, I don't know.
I sent a picture in the Twitter chat. If you can,
okay,
whoever's in charge of the screen, I don't know who.
I mean, Gomer is like the school shooter, prototype,
archetype. Vincent D'Onofrio's, debut here. So if I don't even you can see it, but in the very right bottom corner of this screenshot, very right, it says, well, first the context is that this is where he punches Joker, and then you get that POV shot from the ground of him screaming into things, "You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you." And then it cuts to this, and it's 2:36, but as the camera moves around, you see there's a 1 after it. So it's actually 2.2361. So that's 2:37 right there. And it's right after this quote which I quote all the time, where he says, "You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you," which is like a kind of a Crypto-K anthem or
This
whatever.
is actually a scene about gematria, and there
Yeah.
he's
It's
educating
always-
him about gematria.
I mean, literally every scene is.
The first scene, the first shot of you get the big 7. You learn that whatever they're in rooms, building 7 or hall 7 or whatever, that's always looming there, whatever that's supposed to mean. But yeah, there's another 237, which I'll have to pull up the shot or what time in the movie it is, but it's coincident with Kubrick himself has a small role in this movie. Hey, David.
Yeah, hey, look at this. Now we got David.
Hey, no, I'm not going to be here long. I just wanted to jump in because as I'm sitting here, I'm just thinking to myself how I think it's a really significant point in the movie that the way that this, I think there's really 3 parts to it, but the way that the second part kind of mirrors the first in certain ways. One of those ways being that I'm pretty convinced that Animal Mother essentially is Private Pile. So the way that what they were trying to program Private Pile to be, it's like the fat off of our souls. It's like he basically gets kind of incarnated as Animal Mother. Like Animal Mother is what Private Pile would be had he not done what he did, if that makes sense. And
that does make sense.
And you're totally right too. Like the way that the drill sergeant is like, didn't your mother give you enough attention as a kid? Like he is a kid. And as Animal Mother, he's grown up, but he hasn't really. So like he's like still a child, but he's now what they wanted him to be militaristically, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, that he's been transmuted. That's the perfected form of Gomer Pyle. He was just kind of a defective model, it seems.
Right.
They're showing you the problem with that creation, which is like, I think the scene where all of the kids decide they have to take out Gomer, in the night, and they're beating him is they're destroying that part of themselves. They're like, okay, we have to move on from our childhood, and that's them like putting away childish things. Then you see the reflection of what's going to be in all of them through Gomer, because the idea, I feel like what Kubrick is saying is like, this is a really big problem that's happening in war. He's talking about post-traumatic stress and shell shock and how we're building up this stoicism that's really enforced sociopathy. And there's going to be some consequences in the long run, because you see guys now, like in the 70s, you would have been seeing guys that were 60s and 70s from the Korean War, World War II, that were, insane level, like the things that were suppressed from the trauma of World War II soldiers in the 70s, 57, like as they're dying out, like the end of it, it's crazy. So like 50-year-old alcoholics dying, So right. I think that's what they're saying with Gomer is like, this is what you get when you take away and you deconstruct all of those things that make him, those fragility, you consider fragility, but that are the parts that make him human. And I forget the name of it now. What's the name of the 70s show about people trying to sneak out of the concentration camp all the time?
Smash? No.
Hogan's Heroes?
Hogan's Heroes, right?
Yeah.
Hogan's Heroes. So I think it's also kind of, I don't know, is Hogan's Heroes before this? Yeah, Hogan's Heroes is 65. So it's got to be parody to an extent.
Do we lose David? Or there's just this
I think
camera?
he's just hypnotizing us with the little spiral.
What about how the TI was basically chastising Joker for not believing in the Virgin Mary, and Joker identifies it right away, and he says, like, sir, if I go back on what I said, then that'll be like the worst thing that I could do. So he kind of like sticks to it, and then he becomes the caretaker for Pyle, essentially. Like at that point, it's, if I'm going with the baby analogy, this is the point when he's kind of forced to adopt and become the official caretaker of Pyle, and essentially he loses the baby, right? And then maybe the baby comes back, or maybe we see that he turns into Animal Mother later on. But I'm wondering about the TI. Does he really care? Is this like a message about Christianity and like the forcing of Christianity onto?
I think it's the inversion of the symbol. So because first his helmet says "Born to Kill" with the peace sign, but the peace sign is a German death rune that's been turned upside down, right? So in other words, he's got the inversion of the death symbol. He's got both at the same time. And so talking about like the Virgin Mary is kind of the Gnostic feminist, not feminist, but like the feminine archetype of like Sophia and wisdom, right? And so with Sophia also comes Eris and discord. So there's this chaos and order instead of good and evil. I feel like that's kind of the golden bough pillars that he's talking about the story through.
Yeah, Hogan's Heroes used to come on 5. Yeah, this was like a Nick at Night classic, I believe.
Hogan's Heroes is key. Actually, everyone needs to see it. So basically,
and I would argue F Troop as well. It goes F Troop, Hogan's Heroes, MASH. Those 3 shows, they sort of tell, and they tell it in a very humorous, like over the top humorous way, which is the only real way I think that you can learn about tragic events. You can't learn from it by looking at the sad pictures of the skinny people in black and white in like the school library, because those ones just burn a very like static, specific image in the head. But when they tell it through these jokes, you can actually get through it. So when you start recognizing the real tragedy behind it, you kind of have some, I don't know, like a protective layer of your brain for when you're like, oh yeah, that's like that time in Hogan's Heroes. Instead of having the actual visceral traumatic things be your anchors to all this.
Right.
Like I guess Kitty had, right? Like she walked in at like the exact moment of this movie that I guess without all the context, you kind of lose, I would say humor. Like there's almost a humor in how he passes and he graduates, and then it's like, why now? Out of all the times that he could have given up, why would he do it right after he graduates?
Probably he's not ready to do, like, just because he's passed the test, he's not ready for the world still. David. Man, it's all the lead paint in that studio.
Yeah. Hi? Man.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yo.
Oh.
I sent another screenshot if you could want to pull that up. I don't remember when.
Yeah.
David doesn't seem to be working. But it's just another example of these number games, and it actually comes like a Kubrick has an uncredited role in this movie. He provides a voice line at about an hour and 12 minutes, I think. They get blown up, suddenly get hit by something, and a guy runs up and he starts calling the radio, and it's Kubrick's voice, and he says he's Murphy. So his character's name is Murphy. And so right after that, as he's speaking, you see the screenshot, which you get the 203.5, which is like what? I mean, I was trying to like zoom in. It's like, is that really 1-1? But I'm pretty sure it is.
It is, yeah.
511. So 511 is 7.
Yeah.
Are we sure that's not a 6? It could be a 1.
No, I can zoom in.
I see an H. It's an H.
Is it an H?
Perhaps 203.5H.
Could be. But in any case, it kind of implies, it's very suggestive of that. And that it's very conspicuously placed, of course. And so, yeah, his name being Murphy is kind of interesting. It leads into a whole bunch of other places.
I had a great-grand uncle whose last name was Berklisich, and they called him Murphy because
Berklisich?
It was hard to spell, you know?
Okay.
There's like a lot of letters without a lot of vowels, so they just called him Murphy in like World War II.
Right.
So I wonder if that's not like a common thing. It probably is. Like if you're...
Yeah, I mean, it's such a basic kind of like good old name, Murphy.
Right.
Murphy Brown.
Are there any thoughts on the haircutting scene?
Native Americans losing their...
Okay. I get that because there's also a scene later on in the movie. I'll find it I'll pull it up.
Scalping.
But they show Joker in one of the scenes, and there's a cowboy movie behind him, a John Wayne movie, and he also drops like 2 or 3 John Wayne quotes. But then over his shoulder, there's a little Native American guy, right?
Yeah. scalping because, the amount of money that you made for scalps. California, right? Like they would buy scalps. The government would. So this idea that they're worth it. They're worth money now. And they lose their soul. Ego death in the 60s, right?
See, there you go, is the room 237 clothing on the gal with the advertisement for some kind of cream in the background. You'd have to go to
when you say the room 237 clothing, is it what, like wallpaper that's in room?
Yeah, like if you, I don't know if you can pull it up. There's probably
I'm finding a picture of room 237 here. Oh wait, that's sorry, that's a bathroom that was made to look like it.
It's just kind of that green and purple, very, very kind of deliberately green.
Which is also creepy to think about, that there are like room designers that are like, let's make this motel room like The Shining. That's their inspiration.
Oh, okay. This is educational purposes only. YouTube.
Oh. So there's I don't know what to say really, but there's a behind the scenes documentary that Vivian Kubrick was shooting, like she was doing with The Shining. So there's clips of that kind of thing on YouTube, and it's very interesting. But it sort of led to their fallout, I think, actually. So I don't know.
Can I don't. I'm not going to be here long, and I have choppy internet anyway. But I just wanted to contribute. I don't know if you guys discussed the way that you never see the Viet Cong in the movie until the end. So, like one of the reasons I jumped in is because Alex was talking about what I might say to the end scene. But there's this whole, because it's a woman who takes out the platoon, and you only see the Viet Cong when they're dead until the very end, and then it's one woman. And so the symbolism isn't lost if you think about like Jung's notion of the shadow, because it's all about the Jungian thing, right? Why you wear a peace symbol and it says born to kill on your helmet. And so he says it's the duality of man. But like that whole thing where like that we have seen the enemy in it as us, which is something else that's said in the film. Like that's emphasized with this whole buildup of like who is the enemy. Like they can only fight their projection of the enemy. They're not really fighting the reality of their enemy, So I don't know. I just wanted to add that in there, that and you even see them in the shadows. Like even when there's that attack that happens at night, and you never really can quite make the Viet Cong out completely. Just want to put that out there.
Well, it doesn't feel like Vietnam at all. Obviously, people make that comment a lot, but it really doesn't. It's just like, this feels like England, but that's intentional, obviously. I think to. So he can have his little perfectly created world.
Right. The way in which the Shining relates to Full Metal Jacket, for me, more than anything else, is the repression sublimation aspect. And you can see that with the whole thing I went off on the Shining podcast that we did recently, because, you can see like Wendy's reading Catcher in the Rye, and then you have the sequel to Catcher in the Rye, the last and best of the Peter Pans, and that they emphasize in J.D. Salinger's sequel that it's about war. Like the cliff represents war, like what Mark David Chapman read in court, that he's protecting the children from running off of a cliff, and then the mother hid the draft card, and she says she's protecting her children from running off of a cliff, and so like you could stay home and roll around in the rye, or you could go out and kill. And they make it a point in Full Metal Jacket, like more than most military movies, this whole thing about that getting, for the Marine Corps especially, that getting a kill is a substitute for getting laid. So they want those soldiers to put the energy that they would be putting into sex to put it into killing. And so it's all reversal. And you'll even see that like Kabbalistically, where the Klipot that mirror Tetragrammaton. Tetragrammaton's all about creation. The Klipot are about destruction. And so you substitute reality, and that's the programming. Because back in World War I and even World War II, like people were firing over people's heads when they were told to shoot at them. So they had to be like, how do we get these people to actually like do the thing that they're being asked to do? So that military programming has them name their gun a female name, relate that whole idea that they're like, by getting a kill, they're getting laid. And so like, even like if you watch Jarhead, like it's even like you can see like all the tension that's going into it is that they're not back home doing what they would normally be doing as, you know, youthful young men. Now they're putting it all into war. So,
or Jacob's Ladder too, which is kind of like
totally
the Vietnam War, but you know, transplanted.
Yeah, Jacob's Ladder plays on The Shining like in a really direct way, especially with that evil reincarnation cycle. But that's all I wanted to contribute. I'll continue to listen. You guys have a good talk. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Thanks.
I'm glad you made it to drop some of your gems on us. Is there anything like crazy symbolic wise that you took away from the initial scene, the boot camp scene? Is there something that's like that stands out that we might not be able to get into without you here?
Huh.
Because it's almost like they're two different movies, and you can do breakdowns of them almost independently.
Oh,
I see it as a mirroring that happens. Like what is taking place in boot camp is then like a reflection of what is taking place in the war itself. So I mean, I guess I already said that, but the whole breakdown that they're going through in boot camp is then like they're supposed to be liberated from boot camp, but it's really just like another Bardo of that hell. And they're treating it initially like, oh, like, especially them coming in with Nancy Sinatra like they do. It's almost like, oh, okay, now things are going to get better. And it's actually like, no, things are actually going to get worse.
Right. Because that one is because Sinatra, you think of Cuba and like everything that's happened to any one of the states that we've had the mafia and American colonialism, or corporate colonialism in. And so, yeah, of course, Sinatra's wife.
Totally.
This is a good one too. Yeah. What about the gun song and the fact that they all have to name their guns, and that's part of this whole initiation? This is my gun. This is my rifle. This is my gun.
Well, this might be my gun, but there are many like it. Yeah, this one's just mine.
Right. I mean, it's all about like the way that it's like the stone that the builders rejected. It's this thing that's the most sacred is removed from the archway. And that's like the ending of the film is that now they're all forced to reflect on what's been sacrificed in their process of sublimation. Like now the most sacred thing is decimated in the name of whatever it is that the military is doing, which basically it just in the end with Mickey Mouse, like to me, that's just like communicating. This is just total insanity. Like under the guise of that we're doing something for a cause. Like there is no cause really in this movie with Vietnam. Like there's a statement on Vietnam too.
Or these are like kids. They were Mickey Mouse generation, Mickey Mouse Club kids. This was the programming they were given. It's Wilhelm Reich sexual repression. You control their sexual. I mean, it's their wife.
It's an Orgon, gun basically.
Yeah.
Like, this was a really great comment. Is that they had to name the gun, they had to name their rifle and not their fun gun, right? Because they're being kind of like depersonified at this point. So the person that they get replaced with is essentially just the rifle. They're supposed to put all their energy into that rifle that would normally go into the gun. I assume.
Mm-hmm.
Take it apart, put it back together, take it apart, put it back together, right? No inside out.
All right, guys. Have fun.
All right, see you, bro.
Now you can get out of here.
So one thing I like to do is look at when the movies premiere, when they come out, and what was going on at the exact time that it came out. And something I just discovered right now, which is kind of interesting, is that this movie premiered, Full Metal Jacket premiered June 17th, 1987. June 17th is interesting because it's the Jack Parsons death anniversary. It's actually 35 years or 420 months between Jack Parsons' death and the premiere of this. But I just did a Google search for that day, and it's actually the birthday of Kendrick Lamar. So Kendrick Lamar was born the same day Full Metal Jacket premiered. And that's interesting to me for some reason.
Bach Saga vibes in the initial. That's every military sort of boot camp, in my opinion. I say this a lot, and people think I'm just joking. I'm not joking. The gayest experience of my life was going through boot camp and just the military in general. It is gayer than anything you can imagine. And I grew up Roman Catholic, so take that for what it's worth.
The last time we were talking about The Shining and the whole homosexual subtext of going on between the Ullmans and stuff, but then it's here again in Full Metal Jacket. It's extremely overt. But rifle is also a synonym for, like, there's a line about rifling through someone's head, through the head or something. They're in the head. He shoots himself in the head with his rifle.
Himself. Let's be clear. He YouTubes himself in the head.
Mm-hmm. And you rifle through a file or a piece of paper. So, so what else was I going to say about Full Metal Jacket? So then the first release date was June 26, 1987, which happens to be Paul Thomas Anderson's birthday. For whoever's keeping track of these things, which is me. Paul Thomas Anderson being like sort of prodigal son of Kubrick. And his 17th birthday, actually. So 17 makes it even better. But then it also, wait, what did I just see here? It released in the UK on 9/11/87. So that's cool. Whatever.
Adventures in Babysitting premiered 2 days later?
Yes.
Oh.
I was in the womb. I was
interesting.
I was being generated.
I just watched a little bit of Elizabeth Shue's Adventures in Babysitting recently. It's a good movie. I was thinking about The Golden Bough, though, because you talked about like homosexuality, and I wonder how Kubrick perceived homoeroticism in his art and what he meant by that, particularly considering The Golden Bough. Was it like a ritual inversion, or like, the sacred and the profane, like Aleister Crowley, or what is he saying about the military? Because it is interesting that the military is so gay. Like, the only thing gayer than the army is like the Navy,
I think it just has its roots in like the Roman army and Trojan, like I think that there's something inherent, which is very Bachian, right? There's like a very specific Bach saga, shout out Double Soul Shaman, that like just the Roman bros doing Roman things. It sits in a realm where it's like, if you've got a gun in your hand, it's no longer gay. If everyone's got guns in their hands, now it's not gay, now it's badass. I almost feel that there's this weird, and I'm not even kidding, right? Like, that's the one excuse, is that like, it can't be, I'm in the US military, I'm being trained by killing machines right now. If this is gay, like, I don't know, maybe.
Well, there's something going on. I mean, there is something going on with sexual repression in America. It's really interesting that this like hyper Calvinist, Puritan, witch burning culture mixed with like transvestites and transgender reading to kids in libraries. The dynamic in America is really varied. I don't think they know exactly what they want as a country, right? So the idea that the military is a conservative, traditional place that has we talked earlier about sexual repression, a place for, you control everyone's sexuality and then give them a place to release it. I mean, that's clearly Wilhelm Reich was talking about the Nazis and, the fascists doing the exact same thing. And that's probably a pretty big influence on Kubrick, right? Like, about our military.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything you're just saying there. I mean, it seems to be a deeply embedded thing. I mean, I just think about like George Bush and Ronald Reagan and the guys that were like in power at the time this movie came out, and the whole Republican Party, and that it just seems to be steeped in that kind of.
You said it, not me.
I don't think this is controversial anymore.
Yeah, it isn't. Yeah.
But. Yeah,
this would be the part where David talks about how Nancy Reagan really loved to give blowjobs. I just wanted to do it.
Well, so does Kamala Harris, apparently. So
he wasn't there.
She's a modern day Nancy, it seems. Animal Mother, he wears a helmet that says "I am become death," so he's like equating, the Oppenheimer connection to Animal Mother, and Mother itself. The way they spell it. Oh, this is what I was going to talk about. Is actually that there's another movie that almost is like a carbon copy of Full Metal Jacket before it even came out, which is called The Boys from Company C, and it actually has R. Lee Ermey in it as a drill instructor, and some other people that you might recognize. Basically, doing Full Metal Jacket before it, And in that one, there's like a football team or something, and they're playing for the Mothers. It's MUTUUH. On there, I could probably pull those screenshots up from my files, but Mothers. So like there's Mother, but that ties it to Alien, because the computer is called Mother, and the very first shot she's going in to talk to interface 2037 to talk to Mother. What's the story, Mother? So anyway, Animal Mother, and then the Boys and Company sees an interesting like thing. Like somebody
They also refer to the Marines as Green Mother in Full Metal Jacket. He's specifically because they're talking about how it's like really they call Green Mother in instead of the Air Patrol when they need something to really be done. So like they call him Green Mother.
Green Mother. Green has a Saturnine sort of lunar quality, maybe. I don't know. Stan Shaw, the actor's name is Stan Shaw. Oh yeah, totally.
Like a very early version.
It's so yeah. Stan Shaw is the main guy, and he came on. I forget what else he was in, but yeah, that's a really interesting. Kubrick must have seen this, and there's some stuff in there. Anyway, yeah, that's my point. Stan Shaw, I wanted to look up. Because it's just Stan Shaw. Okay, yeah, he's in like later he came into Snake Eyes with Nicolas Cage and some other thing where he's a boxer, and it's just a very conspiracy movie. But who else is talking?
Is this the Stan Shaw that we're talking about?
Yeah, Stan Shaw. Stan Shaw. He's a good actor. Well, for me, it's just weird because my friend's name is Sean, and his whole deal is like he found this. He has a video called the Shone Report, where in The Shining he found a temporal audio marker, which is the sound going shh, somebody saying shh, which is repeated multiple times, and he analyzes it, which sounds like his name Shaw, but there's so many ways to interpret it. But here we have Stan Shaw, and it's the same thing, and he's in Boys and Company C. So it's a weird, I don't know, it's a weird thing. Shaw is also like a
Cutthroat Island.
Oh, Cutthroat. Shaw is kind of like a bad vibes. It's like a Eastern concept of like bad vibes. So I don't know. There's so many ways, so many avenues of discussion here.
I saw this was like covering you up when you were talking, so now it's covering me up.
I know that like we've moved on from this, but I just like if you watch the movie again, if you haven't seen it recently, and if you kind of look at the boot camp scene, like Sergeant Hartman is using really sexualized language. He's just he's like, "Hey, little girls, I'm gonna bend you over with a tutu." And you're like, "Whoa, bro! Like this is like, yeah, it's sexual harassment, but it's also latent homosexuality. It's just, or I don't know how latent it is. It's kind of blatant, really, but it's just I find it really interesting because of how that's used as this like, oh, he's your father figure. You guys didn't have a real father or something like that. And he's giving them, this pride and like abuse and this weird like abusive relationship that the military fosters. I don't know. It seems like they're doing that. Like the Reichian thing is real. Like I'm pretty sure the most power to control people through getting them so pent up. And this is the thing. What do soldiers say when they go into battle? Like, tell my family I love them, right? Just freaking like abstraction. Your family, like, and that you love them. Tell them all of it. Like, what is that? Like, it's just this whole, it's a complete misuse of that feeling without understanding how to process it or do something productive about it. And the only way that, you can't really blame that person because they've been trained to be like, don't worry, when this happens, this is how you react. Right.
Well, and it's not just the sergeant that sexualizes everything. You've got numerous people that are saying that constantly. The dude that's taking down the buffalo and like the rice farmers, it's just like, yeah, get some.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sexualized world. The American capitalist consumer sexualized world.
Think about the word pistol. a pistol is a piss tool. So it's just a phallic. It's a whole thing like
Well,
that.
someone
Kubrick
mentioned
does
earlier,
this in his
pea
movies.
shooter. It's a
Yeah,
pea shooter.
exactly. That's the whole. It's a.
But it's like it's the adage like the Greeks invented sex, but the Croatians came up with doing it with girls, right? Like there's a lot of specificity to the military being the way it is and how it's controlling men and their sexuality.
It definitely was not the Romans. And there was one thing that stood out to me, I guess, unless I just missed it and went way over my head, but all of the conspiracy theories that I've ever found about Vietnam that got really deep outside of oil, which is boring. Everyone knows war is always about oil, but that it was about the drug smuggling, specifically that they had the Golden Triangle in that whole area that had heavy opium fields, and that even I think it was Ted Gunderson had this whole big talk that he went on like the Prophecy Club or the 700 Club, one of those, and he was talking about how even in Time magazine they had an article about finding drugs being shipped back to the States in the body bags of the un-YouTubed GIs, and that this one in particular fact of like how big heroin played a role, whether it was part of the war itself or it was just affecting the GIs and when they came back home, but that is not even brought up a single time from what I could see in the entire Full Metal Jacket, and that's such a freaking strong component of that whole war. I don't know. I wonder why it kind of either I missed it or it just got glossed over or Kubrick intentionally avoided it for some specific reason.
What do you think, Alex?
I don't have any thought. I don't know. Couldn't tell you. Sorry. I was reading about Kendrick Lamar. I'm sorry. I was actually trying to figure out how long it's been to today, how old he is today, and it's actually, you guess what? Guess how old it is today since Full Metal Jacket premiered?
237
months.
It's 42 days and 37 years. So you get both. You get 42 and 237 in there. That's pretty amazing, actually. I love it. I love that stuff.
Wow.
This quote here too, Moloch mass sacrifice. Actually, unironically, yes. And I don't know if I'll be able to pull it up because it's buried somewhere, but I've got news articles from the early 1900s where they were just talking about the wars that was going on then, and they were depicting it literally as Moloch. They had a huge full 2-page spread inside the newspaper with a depiction of Moloch and all these soldiers, like young soldiers, marching into these flames. So that was a very common sort of reference to war that I guess fell out a little bit. I don't know when they stopped talking about Moloch in the national news, but they used to and they stopped for sure.
Somebody, I think a memo went out.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that too because you've got it even in even in the 60s, right? Like Ginsberg talks about Moloch in his second part of Howl. So I wonder, is it in the Desert Storm period that they move on from Moloch? But maybe we just don't notice it or something. Like when was it? Like we'll look it up. Like when was the last time? When was the last time in news the metaphor?
We've got
Moloch,
some Kendrick Lamar fans in the chat.
Oh, okay. I'll look up Drake too, just to keep it real.
Yeah, we better pull them all in. We better actually.
It's been used in recent discussions about the Ukraine war. Similarly, in conflicts about Israel Hamas, Moloch as a destructive and it's still being done, bro.
If we can just find an XXX Tentacion connection into this, then we're gonna have the full Trinity.
Is Christy and Flip City? Are they want to say something, or are they just listening? I'm just curious because I feel bad not ever acknowledging them.
Hey, yeah, we're sitting here because I think our lag is like 10 seconds behind, so it's super awkward.
Bad.
Oh,
so
no.
we don't want to talk over you guys, really. I'm like,
oh no, you gotta
that's all
just interrupt us. Here, we'll just stop for a while and dance. Watch.
oh no, that's actually way more awkward, please.
How do you think I feel about it?
Well, okay.
No.
So
all I have to say is you guys are like so far down into like the gematria and all the Kubrick stuff. Like I'm not really even following along at this point. I'm like,
I'm sorry.
yes, this was an anti-war movie.
I
agree with everything you guys said.
Yeah.
Yes.
Say what it made, because you guys wanted and talked and saw this movie recently. What were you guys wanting to talk about? What were you thinking about when you saw the movie? What did you want to share?
Who? Did you ask
Well,
them?
gosh, I mean,
That was a
after
proverbial
after listening to you guys talk for a while about it, like I feel like a child. But do you have anything that you had prepared to say, honey?
No, not really. I'm
No.
just gonna go with the flow of it.
We're gonna go with the flow and just sit back and listen to you guys.
Yeah.
Well, strap in, because this is how it usually
10,
happens.
9, 8.
So people keep mentioning Crowley, and I just wanted to bring up something about that, which is okay. I always compare D'Onofrio in this movie to Crowley, and sort of this sort of archetypal look. So when you say what about the shaving of the head thing, it's like in one sense it's like you're creating a bunch of little Crowleys, these big bald guys. But then there is a quote or the scene where it's Christmas, and he says, "Today is Christmas. There will be a magic show at 09:30." So you get magic in 93 and on Christmas. Chaplain Charlie, so there's a 33, will tell you about how the free world will conquer communism with the aid of God and a few Marines. And then anyway, so there's this 93. So I think there is like kind of latent Crowley subtext being explored. Again, it premiered on the 35th anniversary of the death of Jack Parsons. So that's
I mean, having been through the shaving head ritual in the military, there's one interesting, and I like you were saying scalping. The scalping actually makes so much sense because I'm starting to piece together, because I'm not a Kubrick expert by any means. Like I just saw his movies and liked his movies, and like retroactively listening to you guys fit all this stuff together. But he clearly cared about Native American sort of like theology, if that's the right way to phrase that. But he really cared about that and how Americans just kind of wiped them all out. But outside of that scalping interpretation, getting my head shaved in the military was one of the best experiences, because up until that point, you stand out and you'll be identifiable by something. But for a lot of people, when everyone's wearing the exact same clothes, and for the most part, you don't really have like really, really fat guys or really, really skinny guys, because most of them have been kind of weeded out by MEPs and everything. So at a certain point, your defining characteristics is like your skin color.
Yeah, but what about Luther Standing Bear? God damn it. I'm not going to stand for that. What about Luther Standing Bear? What about all of these, like, because like the whole thing, Kubrick should be talking about Native Americans, and like Luther Standing Bear is the story that was going on. Also, you can think of Ward Churchill, Native Americans who had like turtle shells in their hair, and they went in and then they shaved their heads when they joined the military, and they lost their hair, and how those Native Americans were also like forced into the military because they were amazing trackers, and then they lost their capacity to track because guess what? It was like antenna that they were using to pick up stuff without their hair. So I don't know. I feel like the military losing something.
I 100% agree with you. I think that when it happens to the Native Americans, it's a tragedy. But when it happens to regular Americans,
this is a golden bough thing where Kubrick is talking about the neutering and emasculation of these men. Right? They're sexually repressed, and then they're homoeroticized by their latent sexualized.
Monks shave their head too, you know. So
true. Who are also molested in Monarch program. Like exactly the same thing they do to like the little kids in Hollywood is what they do to the Tibetan monk kids.
Take your word for
that. Pretty bad. Even in Nepal, where you think things would be chill, it's pretty bad.
This is all Crowley's fault, of course, because 11 is just the homosexual.
And the cap. The cap is like, you think of the golden bough. The cap is Hermes' cap in a lot of ways. Like the death power and the life power is associated with now that you've been neutered, you're a slave to the gods, and so you're given the cap of Hermes, and you're able to go out and like you have control over life and death, right? I mean,
Matthew Modine, who played Joker, was born 666 weeks after Donald Trump.
Wow.
So I think that's kind of funny.
I do
He's
think
a
that
Joker.
he's-
Yeah. Sting too. Same birthday, like Sting. So there's multiple Jokers.
Oh,
Anyway,
also Gomer and Gomel, and this idea of golem, that the golem is Gomer. I think that there's something to the idea that he's like a kind of. We kind of talked earlier about the idea of like a homunculus or something, or an egregore. I think he's a golem, really.
Yes, I am in a world of shit. So,
Well,
Right.
and I guess him being a baby, if we're
Shit-
going on the
shit demon.
Crowleyan, if we're going the Crowleyan aspect of this, right, then that would make him a moon child because that would be the
anal birth.
Crowleyan homunculus.
Sure. The moon. Yeah. Yeah. I want to get Vincent D'Onofrio's page up here. Because he goes on to play Kingpin, which is another, obviously like Crowley kind of like trope. It embodies that trope of the big, scary, bald white guy, I guess is what we're calling it. And he also would Men in Black. He becomes literally a puppet for a insectoid alien intelligence. So like he's being beaten down and monarch programmed or whatever by the military to become basically a vessel for some kind of forces beyond him. And then he comes back in Men in Black basically doing the same thing. So this is just another example of the way actors repeatedly embody these tropes.
Absolutely.
And there he is.
He's
in
also, of
Adventures in
course,
babysitting.
What about in Steal This Movie, where he plays Abby Hoffman, right?
Oh.
That's his best movie, and he's dating Janine Garofalo in the film. That's one of the most important ones because it's about the CIA and the Weather Underground and how he had to live in hiding for like decades, right? Abby Hoffman did, until it was kind of proven that what the government had done, holding teenagers over bridges by their shoelaces, was Steal This Movie, bro.
Well, yeah, D'Onofrio also shows up in JFK as a witness. Somebody pointed this out on Twitter that he says something like, I can't lose my tab here. All right, that in JFK, Vincent D'Onofrio talks about JFK's ear getting blown off, which sort of syncing. I think maybe Jake Kotze did this, but syncs with Trump's recent encounter with a bullet, supposed encounter with a bullet. God.
There he is in JFK, I believe.
Yes, that's it. That's the one. Yeah. Oh, he plays Orson Welles and Ed Wood. God, I hope this isn't boring.
I'm pulling them
I'm
up as you're talking about
I'm
it.
sorry. Like, I'm also, because I didn't do the dig and I should have done the Doug. I'm looking up Matthew Modine more because Matthew Modine, I feel like, deserves his own episode of Sync. Like, we'll probably have to do, honestly, a Sync Tank just on Matthew Modine. What is he? What are they? What is going on with Matthew? Have you seen that guy? He's in Oppenheimer, Weeds, like Cutthroat Island. He's in all. I mean,
Stranger
I
Things,
love
man.
Cutthroat Island, so I just really got to wonder more about it.
Yeah, he's the daddy doctor in
Cutthroat
Stranger Things.
Island talks about emasculation. It talks about slaves, that this guy is an indentured servant, like the president, who's
This
about
is
to
also
be
him, I
neutered.
believe, in the Dragon Ball Z remake, right? Isn't that
Holy
Goku?
cow, dude! He's minorly based. He's like a low key based or something. I don't know. I don't hate him. Wasn't he also in that like Saved or something like that? Wasn't he like the minister in Saved or something? No. That was different.
I don't know, but he was in. He plays in this movie called Birdie before Full Metal Jacket. So the things that Kubrick would have seen him in,
Like Top Gun and stuff.
like
right?
Top Gun. Well, he's not in Top Gun, is he?
Yeah, he turned down the role of LT Pete Maverick in Top Gun. He turned it down because of his anti-military. He felt the film's pro-military stance went against his politics.
Good for him.
Oh
Well,
my
he made
God.
Birdie, where he turns into a bird.
Can I show this picture? Permission to show this picture, sir?
Yeah, I mean your channel too.
You have to say granted, and then you have to present it. Say granted.
I'm afraid I have no idea what you're talking about.
Just push I can't. You have to share my picture because you're the admin of the share.
I don't see it. Oh, I do see it.
All right,
Sorry.
look.
You know
Hidden
what?
hand.
David joining us again.
Oh, baby.
Hidden hand. That's all I needed. I don't know. It's probably caught off guard, but why is that his wiki pick? You know what I mean?
I mean, you probably paid good money for that to be the wiki pick.
You know what I mean? Like, because he knew that was the one. He knew that one was the one that said, like, dude, Matthew Modine.
But he does need his own little decode. I mean, he's been in so many movies that I mean, 47 meters down. There you go. Freemason, Illuminati confirmed, guaranteed.
Oh yeah. So wait, what was the? I'm sorry, because Alex, you were about to deep dive, and then I just was like,
Was
wait.
I?
Yeah, and then I went off on the he could have been in Top Gun.
Oh.
Derail.
I don't really remember what I was talking about. It's fine.
Oh, you were saying movies that Stanley Kubrick would have seen.
Oh yeah, it was
Modine
talking
in.
about Birdie. It's this movie called Birdie where
Oh yeah.
he is with Nicolas Cage, and he I think they're
It's like an Icarus thing where they make like a flight machine.
well he believes that he's a bird, or he's going crazy and he turns into a bird, or he thinks he's turning into a bird, which is a whole kind of. There's a bunch of movies like that, but that's
set
a really
in the 1960s, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The film focuses on the friendship
So
between
that
two
makes him
teenage
a-
boys. The story is presented in flashbacks, narrative their traumatic experiences upon serving in the Vietnam War.
makes him a flyer. So it's like Danny who wears the flyer jacket, and or Brewster
Wow.
McCloud is yeah. So Matthew Modine and the Birdie. Later he would. So he plays Joker in Full Metal Jacket. Later he would be in Batman. Return to Batman, Dark Knight Rises, or whatever that stupid movie was, as something. So,
Shot in Santa Clara, California. Interesting.
That's a good movie. That's a great movie. What else do I
Interesting.
have to talk
Well,
about?
I like that's interesting because you would have picked a guy who was already in like a movie about traumatic experiences from the Vietnam War. So
Yeah.
of course that's the.
He's always layering like subtext. Like he'll probably have seen everything you've done before he's cast you in a movie, and then the stuff that he uses you in will reference everything that you've done in a weird way. Like even weird extras. Anyway, that's how he worked. So
Also, Vision Quest, probably, which is an interesting movie he did about, what gambler loving, like, kind of capitalizing on the pop music at the time, but like kind of a deeper story about like finding self, right? I don't know if you've seen Vision Quest.
I haven't, no.
Yeah, I mean, like, so it's supposed to be these like kind of like they're in love and they're young, it's boring. But then superficially, but deep down, it's about literally like he's going on a vision quest and he's becoming someone more.
It's weird that it's in Spokane, Washington. I don't know. It's a random place for things, them something to be set. That's where David Lynch is from, or grew up.
Someone had a comment earlier that David Lynch is just trying to be Stanley Kubrick.
That's silly.
No, I don't quite think so. I think he could have, but I think they're definitely different things. I think though they're related in the idea that film school does that to someone is it makes them more like Kubrick on purpose, especially USC in the 60s. They were trying to study cinematography in a way that would have given you a better understanding of film. So there's a certain vocabulary that's maybe even almost lost now. It's weird. Like video vocabulary is not the same as cinema vocabulary.
Oh, that's true. Well, if you didn't know, there's a great story that somebody told David Lynch that while they were making The Shining, Kubrick was like, "You guys want to come over and watch my favorite movie?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." And so they go over and watch the movie, and he shows them Eraserhead, which by David Lynch. So that apparently is great.
Believable. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say he's trying to be, I don't know, that's a stupid thing. They're both.
But
doing
I would say
they're
they're both on the same level, or
Oh,
like
yeah.
they're on a higher level than often. I don't know if Lynch is quite on the level of Kubrick. I don't think he would say he was, but he's definitely on at a higher level than
he's
most,
got a different.
right?
There's a different vibe that Kubrick can't be a Lynch and Lynch can't be a Kubrick.
You know who's really underrated? I would say is like John Milius. John Milius is kind of I think Kubrick loved John Milius more than people realized.
Who's he?
He made Big Wednesday. And so it's another kind of war adjacent film about.
Oh, okay.
And he was in the war. He was in the armies. I forget. He was in the Marines. I forget for sure if he was. Yeah.
So a writer on Apocalypse Now.
Yeah. Yeah. He's super key. John Milius. But Big Wednesday, I think, was one of Kubrick's favorite like surf movies. If
I haven't seen this one. I have to look it up.
It's really interesting in a strange way, because he does kind of look like Lebowski Goodman, but it talks about like kids who think that these surfers are the cool guys, and then they end up becoming and surpassing them in age, and what's going on in their lives and the surfers' lives, and how they're waiting for the big Wednesday, which is like when this giant wave will come.
Mm.
Yeah. Oh well, he wrote the original Red Dawn screenplay.
Yeah, first PG-13 movie.
He created Rome. That's
Clear and Present Danger.
Oh yeah, he's a cubby bear, bro. He's great. He said a lot of Conan the Barbarian. I forget some of the things, but yeah, 1941 is really great.
I don't think I've ever seen any of these older ones prior to Apocalypse Now. Big Wednesday.
Yes.
Wind and the Lion. I've definitely seen Magnum Force. Oh wow, okay.
Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean.
Dirty
Harry, unaccredited though. Yeah.
There's one character
also a USC guy, like similar to Lynch.
I just noticed watching that one of the actors, he's the lead journalist, the guy, his sergeant in command of the journalism team, is actually later shows up in Lost as Christian Shepherd, the father of Jack. And it's this whole thing, which is kind of just synchronicity for me, because I just started watching Lost again and I saw that guy's face, and then I watched Full Metal Jacket, and oh, there he is popping up, and there's so that's an interesting time travel connection to it all subtextually.
Does everybody here have a war face?
If you really tried to get it out of me.
Why is his war face like the O face though? See, again, with there's a sexualization there to the Joker.
It's a soy face too, or
it's also like he's a tarot card.
Soy Jack.
Yeah, no, this is exactly no. Alex is right. This is the vegan soy, like thumbnail you see where everyone's like doing that like open soy boy cringe where they're showing your teeth to show your teeth aren't that scary. Like these are all. I don't have major canines. See, like I'm not that dangerous. Like I'm actually pretty safe. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, when he punches him, I don't know about that, but when he punches him, this is the kind of trick that Kubrick likes to play with subliminal stuff. He punches him, and then he goes down, and if you go frame by frame and analyze this stuff, you'll see like the post on the bed is in between his legs, and it goes up. So it's like he's being penetrated or whatever. That's the kind of games he plays with visuals. And it's all going so fast on a frame by frame basis that a lot of the times you don't recognize it. But
maybe also in this part where he's shorter than him and he's staring at the pendant on his head, he's staring at American Eagle, sigil instead of just the eyes of the guy.
What about this one particular scene? I'm wondering what we can read into the donut scene, the jelly donut scene, where
is this anti-police? Like, what do you think he's saying?
Or what is the toroidal universe, the donut theory of everything?
That must be it.
I've seen this work in action, but I've also seen it fabulously fail. I've seen it where I can't remember what training environment I was in, but I was involved. So they caught me and another guy, like I guess not pulling our weight when we were.
I seriously thought you were going to say making out, and I was waiting for it. I was like, "Come on, Thomas, tell us about."
They caught. It was me and one other guy, and like I think they just saw this movie and they were like, we're gonna do that. So they have me and this guy go in the shade, and they brought us. I'm not even making this up. They brought us fudgesicles, and they told us both we could just sit there and smoke cigarettes and just eat these as many fudgesicles as we wanted. And everybody else had to go and pick weeds. And they made sure that we were sitting there in the shade with fudgesicles, watching everyone could see everyone else, but no one really got mad at me and my friend. In fact, they kind of thought it was funny, and then, like, the whole thing fell apart. You know what I mean? And this actually might have been a military confinement and not a training scenario. I can't remember the details. It was so long ago, but this was an interesting aspect of this, like, reverse programming, in that, here he's clearly not being rewarded, but he does get to eat the jelly donut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's cream filling. It's what's on the inside that counts.
Keep your eye on the donut, not the hole.
Jelly.
I feel like there's symbolism here. I just don't know what it is yet.
Sugar.
Egyptian white cotton too that they wear.
Confectionery delight.
It's basically a temple garments, right? And they're wearing these Egyptian white cotton that they've gotten to a point now where you can give the least of your plebeian servants that you're building up, your slaves, you can give them, priestly robes. And yeah, they do kind of look like Egyptian priests to an extent, right? Like this is what they would wear underneath their, like, indigo denim tunics.
Perhaps he kind of turns into a jelly donut himself in the last scene.
He reveals the inner essence, the jelly donut within.
There was another one too that I think that was worthy. I never actually. So I guess I have heard stories about people that joined in Vietnam and even earlier, that there was a lot more physical contact than maybe Desert Storm and going forward. But there was this one particular scene where he's telling Pyle, he's like, choke yourself.
Oh yeah.
And he goes to grab his hand and he's like, don't touch me. You know what I mean? No, like you need to bring yourself to my hand and just do the choking yourself. And I don't know, this felt like some other really big symbolic moment.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a whole ritual. Again, I always reference him, but my friend Mark had a whole thing, like, code that he had kind of tracked in Kubrick, which he called the Doc Strangle glove code or something, where this is a repeated motif where so like Dr. Strangelove, for instance, his own hand chokes himself with a glove, his own gloved hand that has a mind of its own chokes himself. And then, like, Danny in The Shining is choked and bruised around the shoulder. And so again, Gomer Pyle, he's telling him to choke himself as part of this. Again, yeah, I don't know what you want to call it, but it could relate to, like, autoerotic asphyxiation, or like the whatever, that kind of strangulation of choking the chicken, again, masturbatory kind of symbolism.
Whoa, don't just start injecting your weird sexual analogies into Kubrick films where they don't belong, sir.
Oh yes, of course they don't. Nobody's ever done that before.
Where does Danny get choked? I'm trying to find a screenshot. I can't
Well,
remember.
what happens is that he shows up with bruises around his neck, and saying that somebody in room 237 was like, strangled me. You don't actually see it happen. You just see the effects of it. So you don't know who actually choked him.
Right. Yeah.
So Mark's whole thing was sort of like, his theory was that he actually did it to himself, like Dr. Strangelove does it to himself. And, like, D'Onofrio kind of does it to himself in this movie, choking himself. Yeah, anyway.
For good measure. You just got to throw that one out there.
Sure. Yep. It's all related. Hey, David.
Hi.
It is the return of the prodigal son.
Hey, no, I'm kind of doing the Sam the Newsman thing right now, because I'm listening to you guys and having stuff come up. So one of them is you guys mentioning he's private Joker. It's a private joke. He's the Joker. We're talking about The Shining back and forth. Jack is the Joker. Jack is Jack in Batman. Jack is Jack in The Shining. Other thing is, earlier, Alex, you mentioned Animal Mother in relationship to his helmet saying, I am become death, referencing Oppenheimer. Well, last time we were talking about The Shining, I was talking about the significance of Summer of 42 playing, which is an incredible synchronicity with Atom Heart Mother. So you have Animal Mother, Atom Heart Mother, the atom, the splitting of the atom, Oppenheimer. The other thing is you're mentioning that Matthew Modine was in Birdie, where he wants to be a bird. Remember in this movie where it's saying bird is the word, they play bird is the word. I've taken that, possibly we're making like kind of vague Crowley connections. Crowley is crow, Crowley. I'll always be a word man, better than a bird man. It's a Jim Morrison quote. But yeah, there's just a few of those I wanted to throw in there. And then I'll go back to stretching canvases over here. But yeah.
What do you think about the like we're talking about Jack and the Joker, and there's the Queen Mother in a sense. Do you think this is kind of following like a tarot or like a card game?
Totally, because the Joker is the fool, and there's plenty of significance to be had there, and I've related that to like what is the private joke. Like The Shining ends with a private joke, as we were pointing out with all the people attached to the Federal Reserve, right? So
and that's the madman when Glenn says, "Do you know why I said my name was Stanley? Because it's a secret." It's like, what is it? What's the secret? But yeah, private
right.
And then, so he goes into the bathroom. Sorry, he goes into the bathroom and he steals her hair.
I think again with the Native American thing. So he's thinking about like, what does it really mean to be American? And this is an interesting thing in the 50s to people. They're like, we're not really Americans. We're United States Yankees or whatever. But these American, like, there's a romanticism going on. They're finding guys in like the Yosemite Mountains or something, and they're like, oh, this is the last of its kind of an indigenous American experience. Part of what it is. Well, but they ask the guy what his name is, he won't tell him because it's a secret. Right, because you have three
on the shoulder too. The shoulder, it's right. Sorry.
Yeah, again with the death ring.
They say it multiple times, and that's, you guys are talking about the John Wayne thing, but they're like, who will they let? I can't say it on podcast, but who will they let be the Indians? They say we'll be the cowboys, they'll be the Indians. So there's plenty of references there for that connection for sure.
Another one of the ones that I hadn't seen until I was watching some other videos that were like breaking it down. But there's this one where they're, I guess, like in the media room, and it says, "First to go, last to know. We'll fight or we'll defend with our lives the right to be misinformed."
Yeah, totally. Because they're the press for the war, and then you got Snoopy there too, who's snooping. Yeah. And that's
but also
I think you're making the Charlie connection. But even beyond that, the first Peanuts thing, as discussed, was a war book about what was that? Snoopy and the Red Baron and all that. So yeah.
But who's the feminine archetype of the press and the media, right?
Well, that guy there.
Because I was just thinking like Athena is kind of associated with wisdom, strategy, and with information. Maybe Cleo, but there's often or Hecate would be a good one. And so the idea of misinformation, that the press is also, it's a lie because it's also withholding and unveil the truth, right? So the embodiment of we are her misinformation. And Snoopy, because my whole thing is that Snoopy is a Vietnam vet, and that his best friend Woodstock died, and that's why no one ever acknowledges Woodstock. It's because it's his, post-traumatic stress, schizophrenic friend that he's lost, that he's always seeing, right? And this is what the kids are constantly, the Peanut Gang are constantly around this Vietnam War or World War II war vet. They don't know what to do about it. I think it's actually in real life, Snoopy in truth was a World War II war vet, and Woodstock was his friend. And there's a Woodstock military base, of course, where they train.
Charlie Brown, Vietnam, Charlie Murphy.
Right. Oh, that was the other thing, is Charlie don't surf, and the whole Charles Manson thing and all of that. Like, oh my God. So what were we? So you're talking about Big Wednesday, and I'm just over here thinking about Robert Duvall. So like that drill sergeant in Full Metal Jacket, he's the helicopter pilot in Apocalypse Now. And so, yeah, there's an interesting crossover with the whole thing of like the Charlie don't surf. The Beach Boys didn't surf. The
Right.
Beach Boys took songs from Charles Manson, and Manson's whole thing was like, I mean, this is, as far as I can tell, this was the inspiration for War Pigs, because war was carved into a chest of, who was that? I forget who got that in Helter Skelter, got war carved into their chest. And then there was all the pig stuff on the walls. There was pig on the door, war pig, no, political piggies, all that, you know, so it's like, yeah, anyway. And so it was the idea being the death of one is a tragedy, the death of millions is a statistic.
Right.
And so that was
Snoopy was a D-Day. He's an African American at D-Day, and Charles Schultz, who created the Peanut Gang, was in the Signal Corps. So Signal Corps' whole job is to create propaganda, to send messages, to encrypt and decrypt messages, to make secret symbols and flags and everything like that, right? And the idea that Snoopy was someone really important to the winning of the D-Day beach invasion at Normandy. And that's, you know, someone he always keeps along in the cartoon.
Mm-hmm. Word. All right, guys, I'm gonna get back to stretching canvases, but you have fun. I'll keep listening. All
right, remember, if you want David Charles' plate to win the current competition that he's got running with all of the other radio stations, I can't remember the name, but we'll put the number down, and the number, you're gonna text the number 190 to a phone number.
Text 666 to all of your friends.
Just text number 666 to everybody in your address book, and that's how you can vote for David Charles' plate. I don't know what this is from, Mickey Mouse in Vietnam, but it also seems somewhat relevant to not just the incorporation of Snoopy, but the end of Full Metal Jacket. They're basically singing the Mickey Mouse Club, I believe. But there was also something I had heard before, that Stanley Kubrick was trying to put Woody Woodpecker in all of his movies, and at some point someone told him to like knock it off. Have you heard anything about this?
No,
his fascination with Woody Woodpecker in particular?
I had not heard that. No,
I mean, Woody Woodpecker is a really weird and interesting character that you don't see enough of.
WWMM. I'm just thinking that because Matthew Modine and Mickey Mouse, Woody Woodpecker is like an inversion of that. But go ahead, Andreas.
No, I was just looking it up. I guess, you know, there's maybe like Woody Woodpecker's connection to, I mean, the artist who created it, Walter Lantz, known for boisterous personality and being kind of into the occult, apparently. I just remember like the last time, I haven't seen Woody Woodpecker in a long time. When I was a kid, I remember watching the show, and then because it was like on classic cartoons, going outside and hearing a woodpecker in the rainforest, like the redwood trees, and being like, whoa, and then saying, hey, stop that for a second, and stopping. I'm like, all right, go back ahead, and it went back to doing its thing. And I was like, this is crazy. It's like, is there a dude out there working in the woods? It's like, no, it's just a bird that like knew to stop when I said to stop. That's weird. And then then I hadn't seen it for like 15 years. I'm in Chile, and it's the last thing I see before the Pucón volcano explodes. Is I'm in this like building like down in town having like some food, and there's Woody Woodpecker on, and these kids are watching. It's like this classic 1920s Woody, like 1940s Woody Woodpecker cartoon in Spanish dubbed, and that was like, I don't know. So I associate that with the volcano.
Someone had a quick write up of some of this example. So it's a Woody Woodpecker was Stanley Kubrick's favorite cartoon character and loved him so much he wanted to feature him in every film he made, but Walter Lantz refused. Lantz would later state that he didn't regret his decision when he saw films like The Shining, Clockwork Orange, but he did regret it when he saw 2001 Space Odyssey, blah, blah, blah. So there was this whole aspect, I guess. It says Woody was created by Lantz, startup artist Ben Bugs. So this was based on stories about how Kubrick was constantly wanted to put it in, but I guess he didn't. I'm not really sure how valid any of that is, but yeah, I do find it fascinating.
Seems believable.
And there was a link that Stanley's fascination with Woody Woodpecker, who was objectively violent, more so than most other cartoon characters. He also, there's some versions where Woody Woodpecker Gomer piles himself or YouTubes himself. Like he points the YouTube right at himself. And that aspect of it, plus the cartoonish, like hyper violence or ultra violence, might have also sort of played some role in the Clockwork Orange. The Clockwork Orange has this over-the-top cartoonish violence because of Stanley Kubrick sort of injecting Woody Woodpecker into those characters.
Well, certainly The Shining has Bugs Bunny and Looney Tunes all over it. It doesn't really have Woody Woodpecker, to my knowledge, but there's like a bunch of stuff with Bugs Bunny going on.
Well, and on Danny's door, that they have like a couple people that come in and out too, right?
Yeah, isn't it like, well, Dopey the dwarf disappears, I guess that's the thing. One of the 7 dwarfs. But
there's a write-up that says in The Shining, Danny watches Looney Tunes, specifically Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner, and then with the nickname Doc, Halloran does a Bugs Bunny impression, and that Danny constantly cruises the halls like Roadrunner.
There's so much. I mean, it's like basically The Shining is a Looney, like Roadrunner, when you think about it. And there's like a whole subplot in, well, like I mentioned before, the movie Carson City, which is on the TV in the apartment. If you go watch Carson City from 1952, that's a whole thing. The whole story about that is about blowing a hole through a mountain, which is sort of like basically what happens in Looney Tunes a lot. And, it's got that desert setting, that atomic desert sort of deal where New Mexico. And so where was I going with that? Woody Woodpecker, Looney Tunes. Oh yeah, the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie released 237 days before The Shining. So, and I think I don't know if he's actually watching that movie in the movie, but
how the hell do you know that?
This is what I do, man. It's this great. It makes a parenthesis with 237 days before The Shining is Bugs Bunny, and then 237 days after The Shining is Scanners. Both of these things relate to things that are in The Shining on TV, if that makes sense. So they're watching Looney Tunes on TV, and then they're watching Summer of 42, which has Jennifer O'Neill in it. Jennifer O'Neill is in Scanners 237 days later, and then 237 days earlier is the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie. So yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And it looks like Scanners also depicts Private Pile on the movie poster.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right.
The head explosion.
There's also a painting of the Pope. I'm trying to remember the 15th century painting of the Pope where he's exploding
Scanners
like
93,
that.
That's good.
Scanners, poster, Pope painting, Mang. I'll look it up. Yeah, Pope portrait of Pope. I'll look it up here. There's a painting from like the Middle Ages or Renaissance that's like that.
Well, there's a lot going on in Scanners. It's basically an MK Ultra movie.
Triumph of Death by Elder, I think is the one, right? Keep going, sorry.
It's good. The main actor is like Cameron Vale, famously terrible, famously not a good performance, but like famously good bad performance. Anyway, he's like he's the 237th scanner. And Cronenberg, you have to wonder what Cronenberg knew. And where was he on November 22nd, 1963?
What's the implication there? What did he know?
I don't know. It's just that he's one of these directors that's using 237 very deliberately in a way that makes it seem like it's like some sort of signal or communication or something other than randomness.
It says here he played a gynecologist in The Fly. Is that true?
Yeah, probably. I mean, he directed The Fly, so
he decided to write himself into The Fly as a gynecologist.
Yes, yep. That
By the
sounds
way,
like something he would do.
Great movie, great scene. Here's Velasquez Portrait of Pope Innocent X, which is the painting that Scanners is sort of based on.
Oh,
right?
Cool.
You can kind of see if you have the Scanners poster. Hold on, I'll go with Scanners.
Totally.
You can see it back and forth. Poster. Boom. Kind of. Well, that's even more intense, but here.
Yep.
So like that versus this, you see kind of the idea there. And
For
then,
sure.
so Pope Innocent, the 10th painting is kind of interesting because
Oh,
Pope
that's
Innocent the 10th was what, like, known for, like,
153 by 118 centimeters. That's pretty good.
he was an elitist and he had a lot of money. So all these other popes are pretty chill. And all of a sudden you get to this pope and it's just like crazy.
Demon.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got into talking about scanners and everything, but
How do we get into anything?
It was
There are
Bugs Bunny,
230 there are 237 scanners. There
right.
are 4
exactly.
billion people on Earth and 237.
And it came out
scanners.
237 days after The Shining.
Yeah.
And, Michael, the other thing about scanners is that it ends, the way it ends is with the main character, the good guy basically dies and his brain or soul is embodied into the bad guy. So there's this transference of self that occurs. And that's how it ends, basically, is with the bad guy with the good guy's voice, which is kind of like Face Off or whatever, and Free Jack too. And these are all these movies that I associate with Full Metal Jacket for some reason, because they kind of came out next to each other. I think actually, like, it might be 238 weeks between Full Metal Jacket and Free Jack, which has fascinated me for many years. The similarities, Free Jack being this crazy time travel story about billionaires using people's bodies as puppetry and inhabiting them. So,
Oh, that's not the movie about the kangaroo. Just kidding.
Free Jack, I don't. Joey.
Yeah, there's another one. But no, Emilio Estevez, Mick Jagger.
Yeah,
Free
yeah,
Jack.
Alex Furlong.
Takes place in the future in 2009.
And then, so here's the deal. This movie was directed by a guy named Jeff Murphy. Murphy being the name of Kubrick's character in Full Metal Jacket. And then if you go and watch this guy's other movies, like, there's a whole bunch of shit, but like Under Siege 2 is one of them, which is this famously stupid Steven Seagal movie, but it starts out like the character's name is Stanley Cooper or something like that, and so there's lots of stuff hidden in that seems to be Kubrick references in these weird places that they shouldn't be. Under Siege 2, yeah. So Under Siege 2 is a great little classic B movie, but Jeff Murphy is a really talented director. The Quiet Earth is a movie from 1985, which is a really great post-apocalyptic movie where, like, he's the last man on Earth sort of thing. So, yeah, that's another one. There it is. Saturn, prominently featured. Saturn equaling 93 in regular gematria, and as the fellow in the comments has been pointing out, Scanners is also equal to 93. So that's cool. That's something I didn't know. Scanners and Saturn are the same.
Yeah, I think Free Jack's going to be one that really, in the next 10 years, or maybe within the next 20 years for sure, probably the next 5 or 10 years, a real problem. Like people Airbnb-ing their bodies to each other, to the elite, right?
For sure.
With Neuralink,
yeah. I just saw some TikTok of something like some idea of a dystopian future with the Neuralinks, and it's like really scary what's coming. It seems scary and how believable it seemed, like right around the corner.
Peripheral is that new show, and I haven't
dream advertisements. It's like, oh, I'm gonna have advertisements in my dreams. That's the
Strawberry Mansion movie where like they have to pay to not have advertisements. That one's really good. The Strawberry Mansion. But the Peripheral show, I haven't really finished it or cared to. But the idea of the military using headsets with the families of soldiers in order to expand into using the bodies and using the minds of people in virtual reality warfare. I think that's probably not even a future worry. It's just happening right now.
Totally. it's the temporal aspect that we don't know about yet. But
Yeah, Strawberry Mansion's really interesting. It's a cool movie where this auditor has to show up. Think Scientology reference there, but he's an actual government auditor who's found this old lady who has not been claiming her dream archetypes. She's got all these crazy cool dreams, and she has not been paying for the taxes for having these ideas in her dreams. And those ideas are things you usually have to pay for. And so this guy every night he's dreaming of like peanut butter commercials and soda commercials in this horrible little room, right? And it's very interesting, this idea of having control over your own thoughts without saying any more. I'd say everyone should watch that movie without reading more into it, without knowing anything about it. Just do it.
Star Look, I never heard of them.
Yeah, you'll like that. God,
what a name, Kentucker Audley. What the hell, Kentucker?
Yeah. Strawberry Mansion, the guy who does the soundtrack is really cool. I'm trying to remember the name of but
so okay, yeah.
Are we running the course of Full Metal Jacket at this point?
Yeah, I was trying to think what else we could say about it. I mean,
it's yeah. I haven't said anything.
I feel like I had anything cool to bring up with it. I do. I absolutely did. I always have cool notes to bring up with everything.
I mean, these movies are always inexhaustibly interesting.
Another one of my favorite quotes where he's talking about how everyone should believe in Jesus and the Virgin Mary and everything, but that
Dan Deacon. That's what
that the Marines have this great deal worked out with God, where they just keep him stocked with souls, and in return, God loves the Marines. And I always thought that was such an interesting way to look at it. Like, yeah, I guess so.
That's that's his Christmas speech, right? That's the one that I read earlier, where he says God has a hard-on for Marines because we kill everything we see. He plays his games, we play ours. To show our appreciation for so much power, we keep heaven packed with fresh souls. God was here before the Marine Corps, so you can give your heart to Jesus, but your ass belongs to the Corps. Yeah, so.
There's another homoerotic reference in there.
You ladies understand, so it's also a transgender kind of thing too.
So, okay, here's one other scene that I don't understand why it's in here. Why does this dude steal? I get the stealing the camera part because they're trying to like exploit. But why does this dude do like a quick little kung fu karate move before he jumps on the motorcycle? And then I think Joker also like does a little hi-ya. But I just don't understand, why out of all the cuts, why did this make it into the 2-hour movie?
It's a good question. Is it I don't know. I don't have any good answers for things, but it might relate to that big ass billboard that's behind him. I mean, like does seem to be a theme of this movie, of like each shot is accompanying like weird but abstract billboard, and like I said, Kubrick movies, like you got to pay attention to the subliminal stuff, like of where like he, right in this shot, he's sort of pointing at this guy's at the face on the billboard, who I'm not sure who that face is. Kind of like Louis Armstrong, maybe, or
no. He's just an advertisement for toothpaste.
Okay, the toothpaste guy. So yeah, I don't know what it's all about, but like, yeah, this whole could be some weird.
What's the name of
reference?
And also because he's stealing the camera too, so there's something about the optics of
he steals the camera. That's true.
But also, I feel like there's something about like the way the Vietnamese are being presented behind him, because you've got this picture that seems like, what's the name of that? The bamboozled art style, like of stereotypical African American 1890s slave art. Like that, but worse. Like the name of the porcelain, stuff that they
Mammy,
something like that, basically. So they've made this kind of hyper racist appealing to a colonial whites poster where they're saying, hey, look, you know, you're going to have bright white teeth, which will make you pleasant to trade with, and you'll seem passive and submissive. You know, this kind of, and like you'll be like one of the people that have been colonized before you, which is really crazy. Like this poster behind them, where they're like on, you know, bicycles and motorcycles and kind of industrious. And then there's this guy who's like doing this optics thing of karate, which is not really, you know, like in Indiana Jones, if a guy has a gun, it's not a big deal. But it's just so shocking that this guy is putting on this show, trying to be this like theatrical thing. Like, this is what you think about us. This is the scary thing. You think that we're really good at this. You think we're like, I could kill you and take your gun with one move because of the media illusion that you have, right? I don't see it as like necessarily real karate, because it's not.
I noticed that just in the reverse shot of his karate move, when he cuts back to Joker, and then there's a little picture of Jesus sitting there next to them all, which is very kind of conspicuous. I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but
that's interesting.
But of course it does.
The Mother Mary and Jesus, the Pistis Sophia,
and the fact that he steals a camera, and it's like, yeah, like you mentioned that, it's like the light of Jesus or whatever, and that's a whole analogy into itself of like Kubrick as a Christ figure, kind of like bringing with his command of light. Yeah, there's something to it. Yeah, the 33s are very conspicuous too.
There was this other image too. I probably lost it, but it's when they've got all these bodies in a big ditch, and they're putting lime on it, I guess. Here's this image right here. And this one I always thought was kind of crazy because there's luckily for YouTube reasons, but this good guy's standing. But in this pit behind them are a whole bunch of YouTubes laid out with lime on top of them, and they're interviewing this guy that's on the scene. And every time he goes to take a picture, he gives like this big cheesy smile on his face, like he's posing for all these pictures, and then he goes right back into talking about how all these YouTubes got YouTubed in this village. So I always thought that was also like a weird kind of, we're talking about like putting on a show for the camera because it's not real life. So every single picture this dude's in, he's like having a great time, but he's having a very serious sort of experience here.
Yes.
There was another one too. I don't know how much of it I want to show. I'm not going to show it. But there's one where they've got a Viet Cong guy in a chair, and originally he's kind of like covered up with a blanket or something, and they're talking about that they haven't seen many of them around, and when they show him, the dude is clearly breathing, and I don't know if he was supposed to be acting like he was YouTubed or if he was, just kind of like knocked out. But you clearly see his chest, like moving around, like he's breathing, but he's not acting like he's alive. He's acting like he's YouTubed. So I don't know if he was supposed to be like that or not, or maybe it was just because I'm watching it in high definition and they didn't expect you to see him breathing at that scale.
Yeah, that I do remember that scene as being sort of like, is that guy really dead, or is that a lie? Like, is he just? But it's probably, I think he's meant to be dead, and it's probably just because like I think you can tell, like even a lot of the people who are covered in lye, if you watch them closely as the camera tracks, you can kind of see some movements.
Man, I swear I've seen a decode of that exact idea too, that the people weren't actually YouTubed in that little ditch, that they were alive, and that was just all part of this big facade that they were putting on.
Could be false flag sort of style, media hoaxing, profiteering.
I only had one other observation, but it wasn't really Kubrick or anything specifically themed, but this one's kept me really interested in what happens to people in the military. And one of those things when they're showing them on the drill pad and they're basically just doing their marching. And if you ever listened, especially the Marines are like the best at it, but they stop using words at all altogether. They stop using consonants and vowels, and everything devolves into just guttural noises. So for example, instead of saying left, right, it's just and that's it. You just hear these like it's like a car alarm going off. And I remember that was one of these weird fingerprints that when you're going through training, you can hear these guys from, I might be exaggerating, but I want to say like a mile away. You can sometimes hear these dudes and you know who's marching who because of the weird guttural noises that they make. And it almost feels like there's a practical reason of completely breaking down language altogether. So all you need to hear is just a certain frequency and you know what it means. Just like if you heard versus you know what I mean? Like that actually means turn one way or turn the other way. And that breaks down in so many different facets in military training.
You're kind of creating a hive mind or like an organism, breaking down the ego of in a group. I don't know what you'd call it exactly, but like a group consciousness that's being created maybe. Of course, I didn't go through it. You would know, but that seems important for that sort of experience. In terms of military history, I studied a lot about World War I, and I'm fascinated by what went down on like in that war on the Western Front, in the trenches and all that. It was just a total horror show, but. So it's a different story, but yeah, what?
We had some pre-gaming going on before we started broadcasting, but me and Andreas were in a heated debate. We actually almost came to blows. Luckily, we're separated, but we were talking about what war had the best music, which war had the best soundtrack. And I wanted to put forth Vietnam just because of all the great classic oldies, but Andreas was making some pretty strong arguments.
I'll back up your point though that like rock and roll I ended the point that I concede the point that rock and roll in the 1960s and 70s had the invariable quality of having zildjian cymbals. And so by having zildjian cymbals, which were the tools of battle marching bands for hundreds of years all over the world, for the Muslims, the Christians, and that technology going back to the Crusades being important to monks, right? That we did reach kind of a pinnacle point where wall of sound recording, including zildjian cymbals and being recorded and projected. I mean, pretty based, I'll admit. But you have to also think about all the cool bands that came before. Like, I think the same thing about like rock stars. Like, no rock star is any cooler than a drunk, 60-year-old mariachi guy in the street, right? Any mariachi player, like any rock star wanted to be a mariachi guy. Well, that's like the lifestyle, you know? And the same thing with using zildjian cymbals to make rock. They're like, oh, what is metal? Oh, well, what it is it's music that's recorded using a zildjian cymbal, which is some crazy ancient Turkic magic, you know, that was used by priests to channel demons and spirits and angels so they could write scripture. So yeah, I mean, but they had this, is my point. And recordings of that being available everywhere, is that as good as having your own dude with a zildjian cymbal? I don't know. You know, I think that's kind of the thing. Like a lot of, like in the 19th century, you had these marching bands across Russia that had these, and it was real. So depends. But if you have a perfect recording of a thing and you're projecting it out of these giant speakers, it's blowing up concrete. Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
No,
the cool thing about the Vietnam War is plastic. You know what I mean? Because like they could literally just drop boats with stereos and engines and everything out of the sky, just land in the middle of the river, and you'd have to go get the boat. Like that's freaking. I mean, imagine, it was crazy. People were getting hula hoops, Coca-Cola bottles, and guns and boats and houses and things just dropped out of the sky. It was such a cool demonstrative effort to show how much we'd achieved in colonialism, that we could just go anywhere and drop an entire, yeah, dude, made out of plastic. It's literally
I believe,
it's macro scale GI Joes. These like the military is playing with toys on a literal level. Like, can we just make the actual
Army
boats
men.
out
The
of
Army
plastic?
men.
That'd be sweet. Let's just drop actual. Can we make the guys out of plastic? Not yet. Okay,
Yeah,
we'll get there, right?
You got that? There's like a Army Men 3D, video game that's going to be real. That's real life.
There's nothing more fun. Yeah, absolutely. And the problem with that, of course, is
small soldiers. Real combat.
Yeah.
We're definitely overdue for a small soldiers decode if we haven't done that one already.
Oh my god, I need more time. I need to emotionally process Phil Hartman's death, and I haven't quite got there yet.
Still...
I've spent like all week upset at Andy Dick. You know what I mean?
Oh,
I feel like that's how Phil Lovitz and I are gonna like.
Right, because he got the wife back onto the drugs, right?
Yeah,
allegedly.
Everything. Yeah. Phil Hartman, God bless him. Sorry,
he was YouTubed from us too soon.
Phil Hartman, sad,
Yeah.
So sad.
Well, we're coming up on 2 hours, and usually I'd like to have at least one rule, and that's that the decodes shouldn't take too much longer than the runtime of the original movie that we're doing the decode on. So with Full Metal Jacket being about 2 hours, I do feel this is a decent place to start wrapping. So let me just let everyone give their shout outs and any final thoughts on Kubrick and Full Metal Jacket in particular. We'll start with Alex.
Okay. My shout outs, my plugs. Yeah. So Crypto-Kubrology.com, I guess. You can go and read my writing. You can follow me on X. Whatever. What do I want to say about Full Metal Jacket? Not much. I'm sorry, I'm really awkward right now. This has been fun. I guess my only thing that I wanted to add to what I was going to say last time when I said that 238 weeks after Full Metal Jacket was Free Jack, which is, you got the Jack and everything, but then if you make it a parenthesis and you go a further 238 weeks after Free Jack, you come to a movie called The Stupids. The Stupids is directed by John Landis, and I'm sure people have heard of this, but it's got Tom Arnold. It's like this kind of ridiculous movie but his name is Stanley Stupid. And it's about Stanley Stupid's quest to discover unravel this conspiracy regarding the mail and regarding his garbage, the stolen garbage, and there's like all this stuff in it. It's just,
wow.
We could do a whole show on the Stupids.
Yeah,
I could do a whole show on it.
And this is a movie, not a series, a movie.
It's a movie. One in the theater, unfortunately.
Wow, I can't believe I missed this because I've seen In the Garden of the Night, his movie about child predator human trafficking. I know all about his Roseanne relationship, so I would be very interested to see this. I'm sure there's something.
It's a very bizarre movie.
Tom Arnold's a creep, and
David Cronenberg. David Cronenberg is even in it too, tying it back to fucking Scanners. He has a weird role works in the post office in this.
Tom Arnold's been very vocal against pedophilia. He was molested as a child, and he's done a lot more than most in Hollywood to be outspoken about the issue.
8 Wheels.
Dude, in Kentucky Fried Movie, watch that. Be careful. I just recently watched a bunch of Beatles movies, and I never realized, I was a kid at the time, right? So I never realized how much speed, played a factor into the Beatles. Because everyone thinks about the later Beatles being all on acid. It's like, sure, bro, but try playing 18-hour sets in Liverpool without taking amphetamines. Holy God, the whole,
They were foaming at the mouth.
Yeah, Eyes Wide Shut and Hard Day's Night, there's something about them. I'm just saying, and Help. What is up with Help?
Harford.
Why is Aleister Crowley in Help? We got to do that sometime. We got to talk about that. I got to get a black couch, lie down, and we'll talk about that.
Well, where do you think they were getting all their coke from?
The Tavistock? Fair enough. I don't know. I really don't think that they cared about coke. I really don't. I think they had so much bromo, amphetamine, dextroamphetamine.
Well, maybe except for Crowley stressed the importance of cocaine in certain contexts, right? So
Yeah,
if you
but
were
like
to-
imagine if you were a British Secret Service agent in the 20s and 30s who'd heard Aleister Crowley and you're like, what a stupid guy. He didn't know about bromoamphetamine. It's like if you make the kinds, like again, like the Beatles were playing sets in Liverpool for 18 hours straight. They weren't doing cocaine. Cocaine is not an 18-hour drug. It's a weekend warrior drug.
It was
These
Dexedrine, I thought.
are
like,
freaking Adderall addicts in the 60s.
yeah.
They're taking 16 kinds of stimulants at the same
Benzedrine.
time. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's horrifying. It's really, but it explains why their sense of humor is so bad. It's like John Lennon thinks he's Chevy Chase before Chevy Chase. It's that bad. It's crazy. It's speed humor.
I can, yeah.
was that
All
that
right,
your
that was
plug?
my
it for
PSA.
methamphetamine?
Say no, and don't give your kids Adderall because they might turn into the Beatles.
Well, I'm sorry that you were lagging. If anyone was wondering why Kitty and Flip City in general were just chilling, it's because they unfortunately are stuck behind like a 10-second plus lag delay. So
I had a good time looking at you, Christy. You seem like a lovely lady. I would love to hear more from you. I feel bad that we.
Yeah, I came to plug. No, hey, it was so nice to meet you guys and sit back and listen to what really deep rabbit holes you guys go down over here on the Paranoid American channel. For anybody that likes to laugh, just go check out Flip City Mag at flipcitymag.com. We have a free issue to read, totally free. It's we've got a few. Wow, I don't know why my website's looking like that. It's not loading very well. Anyway,
You're being
flipcitymag.com,
suppressed.
you can click on the free magazine, read one for free. If you like it, you can get a bigger one for free. I think I am. And I blame Thomas for suppressing me. That's all he
It's
wants
his
to
fault.
do is suppress me. Because
You
he
gotta
thinks we're
join.
competition for some reason.
That could be it.
Just kidding.
all paying YouTube
Yeah,
members
check out
and
our free
Patreons are
magazine.
not
You'll
seeing
see
the
what Flip
lag.
City Mag is like.
Yeah, this looks great. I love this style. I'll definitely be checking it out. I love Mad Magazine, or I used to. So this sounds like my kind of my bag. That's my bag, baby. I also saw Austin Powers
I think
recently.
you'll like
Sorry.
it. Yeah. I mean, we touch on a little bit of conspiracy and stuff, but making fun of the mainstream and all that kind of stuff. I don't know why my whole thing's red. I have to go check out my website.
Better red than dead.
Anyway, it was nice meeting you guys.
Nice to
It's
meet
good to
you
meet
too.
you, Christy. We'll do it again soon. We'll get you to like a place with high speed internet, like a McDonald's or something, and then we'll do it. It's gonna be awesome. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Well, this has been a successful episode, I think.
Oh wait! I didn't do my plug. The first thing,
yeah,
the first rule about Xirtus is you don't talk about Xirtus. The second rule about Xirtus is you don't talk about Xirtus. If you found Xirtus, you're probably on a watch list. Tell your family you love them. Be careful out there. I'm sorry. All right, I'm good.
Well, we can do more than that for Xirtus. Go to
I think that's good enough. If you haven't already heard
Better
of me,
than mine.
you're better off. You're lucky. You know what I mean? You're safe. Your family's safe. And if you're watching my channel, you're probably in a rabbit hole.
Speaking of
you can't get out of.
amphetamine,
speaking of people that stay up for entire weekends, just driving deep into symbolism.
You know what, though? That's the thing. I remember as a kid, they're like, give you Adderall so you can go to school, and then they give you sleeping pills at night, and then they want you to get on coffee. And I realized, like, wow, you're taking uppers because of your downers. You're buying a lot of extra drugs. If you just don't do the drugs, you're like a 6-year-old still all the time with way too much energy for most people. I probably should work out more. Then I'd be exhausted. But yeah, you don't need speed. Don't take speed. It makes you lame, like Chevy Chase.
take mushrooms.
Let the mushrooms take you.
I can't think of a better place to end this, except for playing a little NASA commercial. So, by the way, this whole Kubrick and all the live streams, I've got 2 or 3. I'm trying to do like 2 or 3 a week for the next month. I don't know if I'll be able to hold up, but I do love Kubrick, and every one of these I've learned so much more that makes me want to go back and rewatch the movie again. So I don't see a reason to stop any of these. So make sure you subscribe, like, share, do all the things.
Yeah.
But stay tuned because we're going to have a bunch more of these. And if you want more from Andreas and Alex and David and me, tune in on Tuesdays to Think Tank.
You got to watch Think Tank. If you're not watching Think Tank, what are you doing? Like, what are you even risking your life for? And whatever you do, God bless you, drink mineral water.
Ready for a cosmic conspiracy about Stanley Kubrick, moon landings, and the CIA? Go visit nasacomic.com.
nasacomic.com, CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. I'm nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. Yeah, go visit nasacomic.com. Oh, nasacomic.com, CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. I'm nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. Yeah, go visit nasacomic.com.
Never a Straight Answer is a 40-page comic about Stanley Kubrick directing the Apollo space missions.
Yeah, go visit nasacomic.com.
This is the perfect read for comic, Kubrick, or conspiracy fans of all ages. For more details, visit nasacomic.com.
Spread the word with propaganda packs, all for just $40 shipped at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid propaganda packs. We got facts on these sticker slaps. So grab yourself a stack and go attack with these paranoid propaganda packs.
These huge all-weather slaps will last in public for years to come. Remind citizens that birds are not real. Self-immolation is an option, and might make you magnetic. Do your part and get a propaganda pack today from paranoidamerican.com.
Yeah, paranoid propaganda packs. We got facts on these sticker slaps. So grab yourself a stack and go attack with these paranoid propaganda packs.
What are you waiting for? Go to paranoidamerican.com right now and get a paranoid propaganda pack.
Paranoid. Yo. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane. Paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, matters the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blood smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck you niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.